You, the chosen one, have reached a moment in your life where everything has shifted. The way you carry yourself, the way you move through the world, the energy that now radiates from your very being, it has all transformed. This is not an accident. This is not a temporary phase. This is the result of the internal fire that has been quietly building inside you, the power that has always been there but is now undeniable. Your sexual energy has reached an intensity that is no longer just about attraction, it is about presence. It is the unshaken confidence in knowing your own worth, the certainty that you are no longer the same person you once were. This energy does not beg for attention, does not seek approval. It simply exists in its full brilliance, and the world around you has no choice but to respond. And now, those who once overlooked you, those who dismissed you, those who thought they could replace you with something lesser, they see it. They feel it in the way their thoughts drift back to you unexpectedly, in the way their curiosity pulls them toward the life you now lead, in the way their own choices begin to haunt them in ways they never anticipated. This is not about revenge. This is not about proving anything to anyone. This is about you stepping fully into the power you were always meant to embrace. The past does not define you. The pain you endured, the people who doubted you, the ones who failed to see your value, none of them hold any weight over you now. You have outgrown the need for validation, outgrown the cycle of questioning yourself, outgrown the doubt that once kept you from seeing what was always true. You are unstoppable. You no longer move like a person searching for acceptance. You walk with a presence that commands respect. Your energy, once something that could be ignored, now lingers long after you have left a room. And this is why the ones who once took you for granted cannot escape the regret that now follows them. But their regret is not your concern. You do not need an apology. You do not need closure. You do not need to hear them admit that they were wrong, that they made a mistake, that they now realize what they lost. The only thing that matters now is how you move forward, unshaken, unattached, untethered to anything that no longer serves your highest self. You, the chosen one, have stepped into a new reality, one where the past no longer has a hold over you. There was a time when you might have wondered why things happened the way they did, why certain people walked away, why love you gave so freely was not returned in the way you deserved. But now you see it clearly. You understand that every ending was a doorway. Every rejection was protection. Every loss was making space for something greater. And now you have become that something greater. Your energy is no longer fragmented, no longer wasted on those who could not appreciate it. It is contained, refined, and so potent that people cannot help but take notice. The confidence you exude is effortless. The swagger you carry is natural. It is not something you have to force, not something you have to perform. It is simply who you are now. The people who once doubted you are beginning to realize the truth. They see the way you move differently now, the way your presence carries a weight that was once overlooked. They watch from a distance, wondering if they still have access to you, wondering if they can reclaim a place in your life. But you are no longer accessible to those who did not recognize your value when they had the chance. This is the beauty of transformation. It cannot be undone. You cannot return to the person you were before, because that person no longer exists. You cannot shrink yourself back down to fit inside spaces you have outgrown. You cannot go back to seeking love from people who did not know how to hold it. You have stepped into something higher, something untouchable, something that is entirely your own. And now your past has no power over you. You do not look back with longing. You do not wait for validation that no longer matters. You do not waste your energy entertaining those who lost the privilege of knowing you. You are too busy walking forward, too busy living in your full power, too busy becoming everything you were always meant to be. They may regret losing you, but you do not regret letting them go. You, the chosen one, have now reached a stage where your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. Those who once dismissed you, those who once thought they had the upper hand, those who believed they could replace you with something lesser, they are beginning to feel the weight of your disappearance. But this is not because you are seeking revenge or trying to prove anything. It is because your energy, once given freely, is now withheld. And in that absence, the truth becomes undeniable. There was a time when they thought they could do better, a time when they believed they had options, a time when they underestimated the rarity of what you brought into their lives. But life has a way of revealing lessons in ways that cannot be ignored. They assumed you would always be there, assumed they could walk away and return at their convenience, assumed that your energy was something replaceable. And yet, as they search for something that matches what you once gave, they come to realize a bitter truth. There is no substitute for you. You were never just another option. You were never just a passing moment. You were a presence, a force, a light that elevated those around you whether they acknowledged it or not. And now that your energy is no longer accessible, now that you no longer offer yourself so freely, now that you have moved on without looking back, they are left with nothing but the echo of your absence. This is the power of transformation. You have grown beyond the version of yourself that once sought approval, beyond the part of you that needed validation from those who could not recognize your worth. You do not move with bitterness. You do not need to seek closure. You do not have to wonder if they regret leaving, because you already know. You can feel it in the way their energy shifts when they see you thriving. You can sense it in the way they try to reach out without fully saying what they mean. You can hear it in the silence, in the unspoken words, in the looks that linger longer than they should. But none of it affects you anymore. You are no longer a prisoner of the past. You do not entertain half-hearted attempts at reconnection. You do not open doors that were meant to remain closed. The version of you they once knew is gone, and in its place stands someone they can no longer touch, no longer drain, no longer control. This is your power now. You do not chase. You do not wait. You do not dwell on the regrets of others. You continue forward, stronger, wiser, and completely untethered to anything that no longer serves you. And in doing so, you make it clear that they did not lose you. You simply outgrew them. You, the chosen one, have stepped into a reality where regret does not belong to you, it belongs to them. The same ones who once took you for granted, the same ones who failed to appreciate what they had, the same ones who believed they could find better, have now come to understand the depth of their mistake. But this is not your burden to carry. It is not your responsibility to heal the wounds they inflicted upon themselves. Their regret is not about you. It is about them realizing what they were not ready to receive, about them coming to terms with the fact that they mistook something rare for something ordinary. And now, as they watch from a distance, as they see you moving without them, as they realize that you are thriving in ways they never expected, they are confronted with the truth they refused to see before. It was never you who lacked value. It was them who lacked the vision to recognize it. They remember the way you showed up for them, the way your energy uplifted them, the way your presence made their world brighter. At the time, they did not think twice about it. They believed it was something that would always be there, something they could walk away from and return to as they pleased. But now, with every failed attempt to replace you, with every encounter that falls short of what you once provided, the realization settles in. They did not just lose you. They lost a version of themselves that only existed in your presence, and that is the part that hurts the most. Because you have moved on. Because you have continued to elevate. Because you are no longer the same person they walked away from, they will never get the chance to experience you in the way they once did. They may try to come back, may try to rewrite the past, may try to convince you that things could be different this time. But you already know the truth. You have seen what happens when people fail to appreciate what is in front of them. You have learned that some doors, once closed, are meant to stay that way. And so, you do not entertain their regret. You do not look back. You do not waste your time revisiting what has already been left behind. You understand that their remorse is not a reason for you to return. It is a consequence for them to live with. You, the chosen one, no longer seek validation from those who failed to see you. You no longer need closure from people who did not value your presence. You no longer concern yourself with what could have been, because you are too busy building what is. You are beyond their reach now, not because you are avoiding them, but because you have risen to a level where they simply cannot follow. And the finality of that truth, the realization that they can never have access to you again, is the greatest regret they will ever have to face. But you, the chosen one, have already moved beyond regret. Because while they look back at what they lost, you are too focused on everything you have yet to gain. You, the chosen one, have now reached a place in your journey where your silence is more powerful than any words you could ever speak. You do not need to remind them of what they lost. Do not need to spell out the lessons they were meant to learn. Your absence alone has become the loudest voice in their mind, whispering truths they tried to ignore, echoing the consequences of their choices in ways they never anticipated. They expected you to linger, to wait, to always be accessible. They believed that your love, your presence, your energy was something they could take for granted, something they could walk away from and return to when it suited them. But what they did not realize then, what they realize now with a sinking feeling in their chest, is that you were never waiting. You were never standing still, hoping they would come back. You were evolving, growing, transforming into someone they would no longer be able to reach. The version of you they left behind is gone, replaced by someone who no longer needs to explain their worth, someone who no longer seeks closure from people who never truly understood them. And that is why they feel the weight of their regret now, not in grand, dramatic realizations, but in the quiet moments when they least expect it. They see something that reminds them of you, a song, a place, a moment in time that brings back a memory they thought they had forgotten. And suddenly, it hits them like a wave they never saw coming. They remember the way you made them feel, the way your presence brought peace, the way your energy elevated them in ways they never fully appreciated. But the moment they reach for it, they realize it's gone. This is the lesson life is teaching them now, a lesson they cannot run from, cannot deny, cannot escape. Because you, the chosen one, have moved beyond their reach, and no amount of longing, no amount of regret, no amount of wishful thinking will ever bring back what they once had. But you are not cruel. You do not relish their pain. You do not seek vengeance or validation from their suffering. You do not need them to tell you that you were special, that they made a mistake, that they regret ever letting you go. You already know. You have always known. And the fact that it took them losing you to realize it is their burden to carry, not yours. You, the chosen one, do not dwell on the past. You do not lower yourself to remind them of what they lost. You do not need to, because their regret is not your responsibility. Their longing does not concern you. Their sadness does not move you. Because while they are looking backward, trapped in the past, you are walking forward, toward something greater than they could have ever imagined. You, the chosen one, have reached a level where you are no longer just a memory to those who let you go. You have become the standard, the unspoken comparison that follows them into every new connection, every new relationship, every attempt to replace what they lost. They will never admit it out loud, never say the words. But in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when they are alone with their thoughts, they know the truth. There is no one else like you. At first, they may have convinced themselves otherwise. They may have thought they would find better, thought that you were just one of many, thought that what you gave them was something they could easily find again. But now, as time passes and they encounter the same shallow interactions, the same empty connections, the same people who do not make them feel even a fraction of what you once did, the truth begins to set in. You were never just another option. You were never just another chapter in their story. You were the one they should have held on to. And now, as they sit with that realization, they feel the weight of it in ways they cannot escape. They feel it when they hear your name, when they see someone who reminds them of you, when they scroll through old messages and feel the sting of knowing that they cannot undo what has already been done. They may try to reach out, may try to rewrite the past, may try to convince themselves that there is still a chance to fix what they broke. But deep down, they already know the answer. You are no longer available to them, not because you are bitter, not because you hold a grudge, not because you wish them harm, but because you respect yourself too much to allow them back into a space they failed to appreciate when they had the chance. This is not just about moving on. This is about knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to entertain anything that does not align with your highest self. And that is why they will always regret losing you. Not because you hold power over them, but because they lost access to something rare, something real, something that they will never find again. But their regret is not your concern. Their longing is not your burden. Their realization comes too late, and that is not your problem to fix. Because while they are consumed by the past, you are too focused on your future, one that no longer includes them. You, the chosen one, now walk a path so elevated that those who once doubted you can only watch from a distance, trapped in their own regrets. The energy that now surrounds you is undeniable, powerful, magnetic, untouchable. It is not just your presence that has changed, but the way you exist within yourself. You no longer move with uncertainty, no longer seek external validation, no longer lower your frequency for those who once took you for granted. Yet, their thoughts are consumed by you. They find themselves remembering moments they once brushed off, conversations they once dismissed, feelings they once ignored. At the time, they thought you were replaceable, thought that walking away would lead them to something better, thought that you were just another chapter in their story. But now, as they navigate through relationships that lack depth, through connections that feel empty, through encounters that do not stir their soul the way you once did, they are confronted with the painful truth. They let go of something irreplaceable. The weight of their regret is not always loud. It lingers in the quiet moments when they are alone with their thoughts. It seeps into their mind when they least expect it, when they are laughing with someone new, but feel an emptiness they cannot explain, when they hear a song that brings back a memory they thought they had forgotten, when they see your name somewhere and feel the sting of knowing that you are no longer within their reach. They do not speak about it. They do not admit it. But their energy betrays them. You feel it in the way they hesitate before reaching out, in the way they check on you from a distance, in the way their presence flickers around your life like a ghost that refuses to leave. They may convince themselves that they have moved on, that you were just a phase, that what you shared was fleeting. But deep down, they know the truth. You were never just a moment. You were never just another option. You were the one thing they should have fought to keep. But they didn't. And now, they must live with the consequences of their own choices. And yet, you do not hold on to their regret. You do not need their apology. Do not seek their acknowledgement. Do not crave their recognition. Their regret is their own burden, not yours. Because you, the chosen one, are no longer the person they walked away from. You have risen, evolved, and stepped into a version of yourself that is beyond what they could have ever imagined. While they are haunted by the past, you are too busy embracing the limitless possibilities of your future. You, the chosen one, have stepped into a reality where your presence has become a standard by which they compare everything else. It is not something they planned, not something they expected, but it is now an undeniable truth. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many distractions they surround themselves with, no matter how many new connections they chase, they cannot escape the reality of what they lost. At first, they tried to convince themselves that you were just another chapter in their life, that you were a lesson, that they would find better. They told themselves that moving on would be easy, that new love would fill the void, that what they left behind was nothing extraordinary. But as time passed, as the infatuation of fleeting connections faded, as the excitement of the new wore off, they realized that no one carried the energy you did. No one understood them the way you did. No one matched the intensity of your presence. No one made them feel the way you once did. They searched for traces of you in others, hoping to find even a fragment of what they once had. But it was never the same. Because you were never just a relationship. You were an experience, a force, a presence that cannot be replicated. And now, they are left to wrestle with that truth alone. They wonder if they should reach out, wonder if they still have a chance, wonder if they could somehow undo what has already been written. But the reality they cannot escape is that you have moved far beyond their reach. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer entertaining the past. You are no longer available to be a part of their journey. Not because you are bitter, not because you hold resentment, not because you wish them harm, but because you respect yourself too much to allow someone back into your space after they failed to see your worth the first time. There is no returning to what was. There is no rewriting the past. There is no stepping back into a role you have long since outgrown. You have become too powerful, too certain, too elevated to ever shrink yourself for someone who once walked away. While they are lost in nostalgia, you are fully present in your evolution. While they wonder about what could have been, you are building something far greater. While they are trapped in the memories of who you used to be, you are embracing the reality of who you have become. This is not just growth. This is ascension. And now, they must live with the truth that they will never get to experience you again. Because you, the chosen one, are no longer within reach. You are untouchable, unshakable, and more powerful than ever before. You, the chosen one, have reached a place where your energy no longer flows where it is not valued. The ones who once had access to you now find themselves standing at a distance, watching as you move in a realm they can no longer touch. They did not believe this day would come. They never thought you would truly be out of reach. In their mind, you were always supposed to be an option, a door they could return to when their distractions faded, when their other choices failed, when they realized that what they had with you was not something they could replicate. But now, they are learning a lesson they never wanted to learn. Not everything is replaceable. Not every connection can be recreated. Not every soul will wait indefinitely for recognition. They think about you more often than they would ever admit, catching glimpses of you through mutual connections, scrolling through memories they never thought would matter, revisiting moments they once dismissed as insignificant. At the time, they thought they had all the time in the world, thought they could move on without a second thought, thought that their decisions would never return to haunt them. But now, as they watch you thriving, as they see you exuding an aura of confidence and untouchable power, they feel the weight of their misjudgment pressing down on them in ways they cannot ignore. Regret is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers in the silence of their solitude. It lingers in the spaces where they once expected someone else to replace you, only to find that no one carries the same presence, no one ignites the same fire, no one leaves the same imprint on their soul. They search for you in new faces, in new experiences, in fleeting moments of excitement, but every attempt only reinforces what they now know to be true. You were never just a passing moment. You were a force, and losing you was their greatest mistake. They wonder if they should reach out. They debate whether they should send a message, find an excuse to reconnect, test the waters to see if they still have a chance. But they hesitate because deep down, they already know the answer. The chosen one they once knew has evolved into someone they can no longer approach with the same casual energy. You no longer exist in a place where their words hold any power. Their regret does not move you. Their realizations do not alter your path. Their longing is something they must carry alone. You have no anger toward them, no resentment, no bitterness. There is no need for vengeance when your success is the loudest response. You do not wish them harm, but you also do not offer them access. You are beyond the past, beyond the versions of yourself that sought validation, beyond the days when their absence might have caused you pain. Now it is they who feel the loss, and while they sit in the lessons they were meant to learn, you continue forward, untouched by the weight of their regret. You, the chosen one, have reached a level of self-mastery where nothing external holds power over you. The ones who let you go, the ones who underestimated you, the ones who believed you were replaceable, they are only now beginning to understand the reality they created for themselves. They believed time would bring them something better, believed they could move on without consequence, believed they would never look back and feel the weight of their own choices. But life does not allow lessons to go unlearned. And now, as they sit with the truth of what they lost, they realize that some doors, once closed, can never be reopened. They thought you would always be there, thought that the connection you shared could be paused and resumed at will, thought that your energy was something they could take and leave as they pleased. But what they failed to understand is that true presence, true power, true energy does not linger where it is not appreciated. The moment they walked away, they set a path into motion that could not be undone. And now, no matter how much they may long to go back, they find themselves staring at a version of you that no longer waits, no longer wonders, no longer looks back. They have watched you transform, watched you elevate, watched you become someone they no longer have the right to stand beside. They thought time would soften the distance between you, that they could return when they were ready, that you would still be in the same place they left you. But instead, they find themselves facing an undeniable truth. You are no longer within their reach, not because of circumstance, but because of choice. Your choice. There is no sadness in this, no sense of loss on your end. If anything, this realization has only deepened your understanding of your own worth. You see now that what was taken for granted was never truly meant to last. You see now that their departure was never a loss, but a clearing of space for something greater. You see now that the universe does not allow the unworthy to hold on to something sacred. You do not entertain their regret. You do not invite their presence back into your space. You do not seek to soothe the wounds they inflicted upon themselves. Because while they are stuck looking back, you are too busy stepping into a future that was always meant to be yours. They can watch, they can wonder, they can wish, but they will never get to experience you again. Because you, the chosen one, have become too powerful to ever be a second thought again. You, the chosen one, have reached a level where your absence is not just noticed, it is felt on a soul-deep level. The ones who once had access to you, who once took your presence for granted, who once assumed that you were just another chapter in their ever-expanding book of experiences, are now beginning to understand that they did not lose just another person. They lost a presence, a force, an energy that they will never encounter again in this lifetime. They have tried to fill the space you left behind, tried to replace what they once had with something new, with someone else, with fleeting distractions that were supposed to erase the memory of you. But what they failed to realize, what they are only now coming to terms with, is that certain voids cannot be filled by anyone else. Certain experiences, certain energies, certain people only come once. At first they tried to deny it. They told themselves they had moved on, convinced themselves that they made the right decision, reassured themselves that time would bring them someone better. But as the months passed, as the excitement of the new wore off, as they found themselves surrounded by people who did not ignite the same fire, who did not make them feel the way you once did, the truth set in, like a slow-burning realization. They did not just lose a relationship, they lost an experience, a feeling, a sense of certainty and comfort that they never fully appreciated when it was right in front of them. And now, no matter how much they search, how many people they entertain, how many nights they spend trying to distract themselves, the void remains. Because you, the chosen one, were never just someone to pass time with. You were never just a placeholder in their life. You were the difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And that is something they will never find again. They replay moments in their minds, going back to the times when your presence was steady, when your energy was freely given, when they had access to something they did not yet understand was rare. They wonder what would have happened if they had chosen differently, if they had appreciated what they had before it was gone, if they had realized that they were standing in the presence of someone who was not meant to be taken lightly. But it is too late. The past is not a door they can walk back through. The person they once knew no longer exists. The version of you that loved them, that poured into them, that saw them as worthy of your time and energy, has evolved into someone who no longer even considers them an option. They may try to reach out, may try to test the waters, may try to convince themselves that there is still a way back. But in the pit of their soul, they know the truth. There is no returning to something that was already meant to be left behind. There is no rekindling a fire that is burned out, not because it lacked fuel, but because you have already moved on to something greater. You, the chosen one, do not fill your life with people who once discarded you. You do not give second chances to those who could not see your value the first time. You do not entertain the past when the future holds something so much greater. And now, they must live with the realization that they let go of something they will never be able to find again. You, the chosen one, have reached a stage of ascension that few will ever understand. The version of you that once longed for love, that once sought validation, that once gave your energy freely to those who did not deserve it, that version no longer exists. You have stepped into something far greater, a level of being that only those who have done the work can access. And this is why they will never be able to follow you. They watch you from a distance now, trying to make sense of how you have risen so high, how you have moved so far beyond them, how you have become so untouchable.